Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today, my guest is Shena J. Jensen, who is a licensed therapist and relationship coach of over 15 years. And today we dive into somatic therapy. What is somatic therapy? How is it different than other therapies? How it moves us from talk-based therapy and being in our brain to really connecting deeply with our body, our feelings, our sensations, our emotions, finding grounding practices. This is just a really beautiful way to move through trauma. Our body holds on and remembers so much. And I really am a strong proponent of somatic practices. So I feel like this podcast is full of juicy information. I really hope you'll enjoy it. Please, if you do, take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. So much gratitude for a comment or a review. And I really hope that you'll enjoy today's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Shena. Welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Hi, Nikki. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I've actually been looking for a while for a somatic therapist. I think a lot of people have a general or vague idea about what a somatic therapist is and what that means. But if somebody doesn't have any of that background, or if there's a client and they're looking for all the different modalities and they're thinking about exploring somatic, which I think is very different than a lot of other modalities, what do you tell them somatic therapy is about? What can they expect? And how is it? I'm dumping a lot of questions at you at one time. Um, how is it different than other modalities and other therapies out there?
Yeah, well, somatic therapy really focuses on the mind-body connection and really believes that there is an emphasis on how memories can be stored in the body. So basically, instead of processing cognitively in therapy, talking about processing your thoughts or focusing on the behaviors you're going to do, it really focuses on that there are memory stored in tension and pain, in the ways our body feels and the ways we move even, that form who we are and how we naturally show up in the world, the things that we believe. So it's really about the inside out approach, that the ways that we feel or just memories stored in the body can come out and impact the way that we perceive things, the way that we feel. And when we focus on the body itself and unlocking these memories, unlocking energy stored there, then we can bring awareness to those memories or bring awareness to those emotions and metabolize them in a different way and open to a new wiring of ourselves, of the way that we show up in the world. So it could look a lot of different ways, but basically instead of talking in therapy or just having a therapist say, this is what I'm going to assign you to do, it needs to have something that focuses on your body, bringing awareness. It could be mindfulness, it could be touch, somatic experiencing, hakomi. There's hug therapy, which is not traditional.
Yeah. Yeah, and from my understanding around somatic therapy and kind of how our body processes trauma, and I'm a believer that everyone's walking around with trauma and it looks different for everybody. And there's a lot of small traumas that we don't label as traumas because they're not big and outright, like physical abuse, sexual abuse, something like that, but they could be something somebody said that damaged us or an experience that we had that creates this long lasting trauma. And that theory is that it sits in our body and our body holds on to that trauma. So, and as a therapist as myself, I feel like there is value in talk therapy, but then there's a limitation because you can talk and intellectualize it, but then there's this trauma that's been stored in the body, and that's another layer that needs to be removed in order for complete healing to take place. And that's been my experience and understanding in my own processing of my own trauma was that I only got so far talking, 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 and it wasn't until I moved it out of my body that it was able to clear completely for me.
Yeah, I could share my first experience that I'm aware of around that there's a whole other layer to unlock. When I was 25, I was with one of my most significant partners for 5 years, and we were breaking up.
Mm,
And I was driving him to the airport the next day. And that night, I remember going to sleep, and I was so sad, and I just started crying, which was expected. But then the crying came out in such an intense way.
mm,
My body just took over, and the way that I was crying was unlike anything I'd remembered before. And it brought up a flood of memories of being 6 years old when
mm,
my father left the house. He divorced my mom and moved out. And before this point, I had always believed and I had talked about my experience through the divorce, through the separation later. I talked about it, over and over and over. But I had always sort of believed that I was kind of fine
mm-hmm.
about him leaving. There are other
Yeah.
things that I struggled with. But all of a sudden, through the memory of this significant man in my life leaving, the
Mm-hmm.
way that my body sobbed, I had a flood of memories of crying every night to sleep when my father had left that I had never remembered before that point. And it
Mm,
just unlocked this whole layer of I'm not fine. I have not been fine. And there's so much
mm,
grief that I just buried, and somehow my mind just made it go away. And only my body could unlock that.
yeah.
So, Peter Levine, who is the founder of Somatic Experiencing, he has some great books, and he writes about this that animals, for example, when like a lion is chasing an animal, it'll run away and then it sort of like shakes the trauma
Yeah.
off and it
Mm-hmm.
processes it. But because we have this amazing prefrontal cortex,
Mm-hmm.
we can think our way through things or strategize, or we hold memories, and we can do different things, and we don't, or we'll repress the shaking off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or we don't know how to shake off. There's just all this different things that can happen. And so the trauma gets stored in the body. So working with somatic therapy is a way to help unlock it again so that shake off can finally be released. And
Yeah.
our trauma often isn't one moment, like a lion chasing us. It's often repetitively over time, like a small t trauma of um, being excluded or believing that we're not good enough or something where we contract and hold it and repress it. And it changes the way
Mm,
that we show up and function.
yeah. And that's a really good example that you shared about your dad, because that's considered a small t trauma. And then sometimes we, as adults, we do that. We're like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. I've talked about that enough. I've processed it. Yet it is a big deal, and our body's holding on to that. And and I like what you said about you had this current event, and then it triggered this memory of a past event, and you were able to like go through down time and process kind of probably both of them around the same time, because the earlier memory is the one that kind of was held in the body. And I think that that's really common for people to have common day triggers. Of course, they're related to past bigger triggers, but also when somebody's having a somatic process, they do tend to go down this memory lane and start linking it with earlier events. And so I think that it's interesting how the brain works in that way, where we start linking all of these things from our past, and then we're able to move it through. You moved yours through grief and tears, and I'm assuming there's some other things that you were doing to
Yeah.
move that. So
Yeah.
how were you moving that out? Because it's not, I feel like it's more than just tears. It's like a full body expression.
Mm-hmm. Well, this particular was linked to like some of my biggest traumas. So that really was the beginning of my journey of becoming a therapist. And I really focus on couples therapy because that has been healed through my own therapy,
Mm,
group therapies and with my current husband of 17 years. So
Mhm.
the trauma can come up, but we know how to work together, and he knows how to be with me to help shift the experience of my body so
Mhm.
that I'm not re-experiencing, or those beliefs or those memories are now more just like thoughts or memories and not the feeling in my body that I felt. Now I have a new feeling. So it's
Mhm.
trying to unlock it so those neurons in our nervous system connect from the body to the brain and replay these patterns. And then trying to bring something to the present moment that's new to rewrite these patterns. And this could be a sense of touch with ourselves. This could be breathing slowly. This could be a loved one holding us. This could be like bringing a present centered awareness of what happened before is not what's happening now, and
Mhm.
physically experiencing something different in the now, noticing something in our partner different. This is why I love couples therapy, because I can be with both of them and bring them a new experience in the present moment with their
Mhm.
bodies.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure I am safe now is a big one.
I am safe now, or abandonment wound, you're going to leave me, or I'm not enough, or the worthiness wound, I'm not good enough, or I don't
Mhm.
have any power. Um, Sometimes we'll think those consciously or subconsciously, or oftentimes it's not even a thought at all. It's just the way that we react in our bodies. The body has this feeling, then it tells the brain this old feeling or message that got wired to that experience in the past.
Mhm.
And we have our patterns of contraction. And with trauma, that's the most ingrained pattern because we have a negative bias for survival of I'm going to go to the worst case. And then we tell the brain this bad thing is happening, and the brain goes, oh, it's that bad thing that we're afraid of. I better do the thing that I'm used to. Pull
Mhm.
away and rely on myself. Don't talk or chase, get someone to love me. I'm not okay. I need something to make me feel better. A substance, whatever the thing is that we do.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm actually really curious about disassociation. Disassociation slash avoidance. I realize they're very different.
If they're disassociated, what could help them move out of the
Yeah, so
pattern of
they know they're
dissociation?
disassociated. So, oh, when my partner triggers me, I get disassociated. When somebody calls me on something at work, then I avoid them and I don't think about it. Or I know I have this issue, so I just avoid thinking about it and think about other things, then I'm okay. So they're able to identify the dysfunctional patterns, but then they don't know how to move through them.
When we avoid something, we leave it in the unknown. And the problem with the unknown in the present moment, we're like, oh, good relief. I don't need to deal with that. But when something is unknown, because we have the negative bias as humans, the subconscious makes it very big.
Mhm.
And something vague, because it's unknown, can
Mhm.
always be bigger, and we will always make it bigger in our bodies than something that is known. You dissociate when things aren't going well. You don't want to think about losing your job, but what's underneath that is probably something bigger, which is I'm not good enough, like I'm not worthy, and or I'm not loved. And so the vague thing is much bigger than what the present thing would be, which is perhaps you aren't performing. You aren't giving me what I want, is maybe what the manager is thinking and feeling. You're not giving me what I want. I'm not happy with you. Or maybe you even lose your job. So these things, if we can bring them to presence, our body is so afraid to face them because our body just remembers this whole nervous system of memories of past all combined together now. Because when neurons fire, they wire together. So every time we have an experience of um, that's not good, bad, didn't feel good in my body, and we wire it with I'm not good enough, the I'm not good enough feeling, the I'm not good enough belief. Now there's all these stacked I'm not good enough feelings and beliefs, and that's overwhelming and scary, and we just don't want to think about it, so we grasp something else,
Mhm.
um, a substance, or diving into work, or daydreaming, whatever it is, or just not even being present. We don't even know where we went. Intense, like classic dissociation.
Yeah.
So coming into presence, we can be with the feelings in our bodies, of that feeling of not good enough, the feeling of being unworthy, and the thoughts associated with it, and expand our capacity to accept the way it feels in our body. We're not accepting I'm not good enough because this is a made up idea. Just accepting how it feels in my body, all these disappointments, these ways that I wanted to be included, or I wanted to experience a scenario. I wanted this promotion, or I wanted someone to love me, and I wanted them to touch me, or I wanted them to hold me, or whatever it was. And then, or experience the thing in the present moment. I want my manager to say, you're doing great, and they're not saying you're doing great. I'm disappointed. It doesn't feel good. And actually experience that in the present moment and breathe through it, and then rewrite in our nervous system, like, this is something that's happening that I don't like, and then physically feel okay. Like, I'm okay. I don't like this, and I'm okay. It's really like building a muscle, like going to the gym, lifting weights. It's uncomfortable. Expanding your capacity to have uncomfortable experiences, especially associated in the realm of our trauma, our core belief, wounding belief.
Yeah.
That we can go through that and become stronger, and I'm okay, and expands this capacity to feel good things, because I don't have to dissociate. I don't have to go away. I can experience this thing that I don't want, and I can also be aware that there's other things that I do want. Like, I don't have to believe I'm not worthy. I'm not giving you what I want, and I'm still can feel okay, good about myself. There's other things that I love. There's other things that other people love. So it just makes room. So the tip is basically find a way to get present. Feeling where you feel it in your body is, of course, the most primary way in somatic therapy to get present with that. Where does it not feel good in my body? Doing a body scan. Where does it feel the worst? And bringing breath to that, bringing presence. What is the emotion? So that can be a whole body of work for someone to start naming emotions. What are my emotions if they've been repressed? What are the emotions associated with sensation? What do I think? What are my memories associated with this? So it's a lot of unpacking.
Yeah.
But at the very basic, even just if you can breathe and be in the present moment and go, I'm sitting in a chair right now.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in my chair. I don't like that. I'm worried about an email from my manager. I'm sitting in a chair. Naming what's happening can really bring us into that presence.
I'd love for you to share the different ways that people somatically release, because I've seen people shaking violently. I've seen people crying. I've seen people have whole body reactions. And so my experience is, if they haven't seen somebody else do that and they don't expect that, it can be a little bit overwhelming to experience that the first time, and then that maybe there's that thought that they're not okay or something's wrong with them, where it's really good and beautiful and normal, but it might not look the way they expected it to look, or look the way that other people process through it. So what are some of the outside of the norm responses somatically that you've seen, so that when somebody has that experience in that way, that they realize that there's a normalcy to it?
Obviously, I think that there's benefits to licensure, and it's good to work with someone who's licensed, but overall, you want to work with someone who's very trained in trauma and how to contain it. Because I've been to a lot of workshops where people will be releasing all these emotions, but then you're just repeating the nervous system pattern. Remember, you want to bring up the nervous system pattern to rewrite the nervous system pattern. So if you just like screaming about your parents, or I hate my mom, or whatever it is, and releasing, and then having this, you are just repatterning this response. So
Yes.
an example would be, you are noticing something is happening in their legs. Okay. And then we're going, okay, what's happening in your legs? You slow down, the legs will be shaking. And sometimes they'll have memories coming up with it. A lot of trauma, whether it's physical abuse, rape. It can be something that they don't know what it is because they're a baby and it's very preverbal, and they don't know. They're just shaking. So I've had times when we get presents with the shaking, and when they come present with the shaking, it can be very scary and overwhelming, and they want to run away. They want, what's happening in your legs? I want to run away. And I've had people start screaming, and rolling around and guiding them to run, actually. Get up and run away. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that Peter Levine, like, let's shake this off, and having them run and run. And running, right, gets you into the breathing and the presence. This is
Yeah.
something, by the way, like I've had people who are very dissociated, and sometimes just running up and down the stairs is the only thing that can get them back into the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because you're getting them back in their body,
back in their body,
out of their head, which has no answers most of the time.
out of this, the brain, the nervous system rewriting, I'm in the past, I'm in the past. We want to bring the
Yeah.
presence to that nervous system, not just the present moment, but combine them together. Go,
Yes.
I'm having this feeling and I'm here and I'm
Safe.
safe.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing, no one's touching me. I'm not, maybe something's happening I don't like,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm safe.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm uncomfortable in my body and I can withstand the discomfort. That's
Yeah.
the thing that we want to start rewriting in the
Mm-hmm.
body, in the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Running, having to get up and run outside and come back in. Definitely very common for people screaming and wailing. And it's important, I think, to let the sound out
Mm-hmm.
too.
Or even having a
Uh,
tantrum, like being a little kid and having a tantrum and banging your arms on the bed and thrashing around can also be like a somatic release of just moving the body, right?
yeah. And then what I would do also then is when that's released,
Mm-hmm.
go, what do your arms want to do?
Yeah.
Because often the tantrum is the reaction to, I don't have any power and
Mm-hmm.
I just need to flail. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do your arms want to do? And sometimes people's hands will be shaking or squeezing. Sometimes people are very calm, and then you'll just notice in therapy,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening with your hands? And then that can unlock. Oh, I never noticed. Like, I don't know, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't notice I was squeezing my hands. And so, what are you squeezing? What are you feeling? And that can bring up a lot of memories, or even not a memory, just feelings. And then it's like, what do your hands want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to punch someone, or I want
Yeah.
to control, and then giving them a new way to control with their hands,
Yeah.
or giving them a new way to say, like, how about you say, this is not okay.
Yeah.
I don't like this. Don't do this to me. Like experiencing a whole new bodily experience so they don't need to be punching.
Mm-hmm.
Another instance of the same shaking of legs. So the legs, what do the legs want to do? Maybe they want to kick. But then we moved into the grounding and standing up for
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
of being able to say, like, this is who I am, and claiming
Mm-hmm.
themselves and feeling their own presence. And I'm not a little kid anymore. Like, and having that compassion, that child, like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
big and I want to protect this child in me.
Yeah.
And so it's not just the acting out of what the legs want to do, but then, like, really in this grounded way of repatterning.
Mm-hmm.
And once they felt grounded through the legs
Yeah.
and presencing this, like, energy through the earth, and I'm connected, I deserve to be here, like that root chakra energy, then the shaking of the legs stopped. And then they could have the memories come up, or the familiar feeling of discomfort, but the legs didn't shake anymore.
Mm.
And that didn't happen until there's the grounding, because
Yeah.
the legs would shake, and just, what do the legs want to do? Like, I want to kick, I want to fight. It would still repeat. We want to rewire what's happening
Yeah. It's
into
an
how you want
embodiment.
to show up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, it makes me think of I've been a yoga teacher for 30 years, and I've been in these classes where people come in and they have this very rounded, caved in posture, um, and really introverted. And then we do these warrior poses and we talk about energy shooting through the arms, almost like electricity, and your arms are super strong and your legs are strong and you're grounded. And then you see these people like start to connect with the earth and connect with their body and stand in their power, and like their heart expands and you can actually see them grounding and growing within themselves and expanding and coming out of this closing in posture. And I think it's really what you're saying is really empowering. So being in those experiences is extremely disempowering when we're the victim of trauma, and then it's moving through that into this stepping into our own power, standing in our own body, embodiment and empowerment is what keeps coming to me when you're talking.
Yeah, it's utilizing this humanness that we
Yeah.
have a body, and this body goes through a lot, and we need to take care of it. And this body is also this amazing healer too, because when we can use the body to heal, we use the body is what gives us form in life. And
Hmm.
just by changing your form, you can change who you are. Just by
Yeah.
changing your posture, you change who you are. When you have a different posture, you then have a different belief about yourself. You
Right.
believe other people see you different. It just can unlock so many things. So yes, yoga is a form of somatic therapy, but it's so important to just honor this body and not just be in our heads or think that our
Hmm.
brain can do everything.
Yeah.
So utilizing that precious thing for healing.
Hmm. I do want to circle back to what you talked about a little while ago about going to a therapist. I know that there's coaches that are extremely good at what they're doing, and there's therapists that are licensed that maybe aren't great at what they're doing. So I do think it's really important to seek out services through somebody that's licensed, because there is a little bit of a regulating board and a code of ethics that doesn't exist with coaches. And I also think that there is an importance to go to somebody that's trauma informed. And the reason for that is when you're doing something like EMDR, when you're doing something like somatic therapy, you are in a sense opening up a like a beautiful can of worms. And if somebody's not trained to hold that, and it takes a specific training to hold that energy for somebody and to create an extremely safe container, then that person can get flooded, meaning instead of having one foot in the present and one foot in the past, they've got most of their feet in the past. Then they get really overwhelmed. Their system gets overwhelmed, and it can be re traumatizing, and it can be damaging to the nervous system, and it can create more harm. And so I think when somebody's seeking out a somatic therapist, it's really important to look at their experience, what drew them to this field, what how trauma informed they are, what does it mean to be trauma informed, and then can they hold the emotions that you can potentially bring, because our range of emotions as humans is huge. And so I could come into a session and experience a lot of anger, right? And or a lot of frustration or a lot of whatever those huge emotions are. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's intense pain. And so it's so important for that therapist to be able to hold that container with love and gentleness and kindness, and know what to do with it so that it's not overwhelming the therapist, that they're not afraid of it. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this, because I do realize that not all therapists are incredible and there's some incredible coaches, but I do think that there is something about being regulated. And when we're licensed, we have a certain amount of education, we've passed a lot of different tests, we've been under supervision, and it doesn't mean we're perfect, but there is a different level. And you've been both, because I think you started as a coach and moved into being a licensed therapist, is that right?
Yeah, so I was trained as a coach, and I spent years doing these group workshops, and there's there's facilitator trainings where people get trained to become facilitators who don't have an education in psychotherapy. But yeah, over the years, I definitely saw a lot of things that I thought were not the best in the best interest of the client. But they don't, if you don't understand the foundation of what the trauma is or why it's coming up or how it can manifest in so many different ways, you can't just know what to do for every single instance. You have to understand the basis of what's
Yeah.
happening and how to what this client needs,
Hmm.
um, without knowing all the entire story, just really helping to attune to them. So people can really unlock a lot of trauma. And this can happen in all kinds of settings,
Yes.
medicine, ceremonies, workshops. You could
Yes.
just really go very fast and unlock it all. And then there's not a container. And then they'll go out and it's not processed and it's not contained and they don't have anyone holding them. So it is very important to have a holder someone there that can also, titrate the
Mm-hmm.
trauma coming opening.
Right, you don't go
Help
right into
someone.
the deep end.
Yes.
You go from the
Um,
shallow end slowly to the deep end.
yes, it's like built right, just like going to the gym. We're building the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they can and will tear.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to open up to our capacity to actually be able to process it in our nervous system. Um, and also looking for someone who has gone through it themselves, understands trauma in their own body, like doesn't just have an idea of what you're going through, but
Yeah.
knows it, and that can use those mirror neurons of compassion and sensing, like, okay, it could be the slightest thing. A lot of people show trauma, they're frozen or they're fawning,
Mm-hmm.
and a therapist doesn't know. So it's really about finding a therapist that, or a facilitator, practitioner that knows inside and out, has worked with tons of people, what you're going through, has even better done it themselves, and
Yeah,
is
that's I think
living
that's
where you want to be.
necessary
Yes,
because you can read it out of a book, and that's to only take you so far, or you can experience yourself, and then you have to know what it's like to be on the other side of the table.
right. You're not going to get a personal trainer who
Who's never worked out?
who's done yoga but
Yeah.
doesn't have the strength in the particular place or the way, the shape of the body, whatever. Pelvic floor therapist, who's never had a baby.
Yeah.
You want to,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, you know what this is like, and what the process of doing this is going to be like,
Yeah.
and what the limits are, and the dangers, and how you can hurt yourself along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm assuming that on the front end, you're doing a lot of grounding techniques and techniques to just learn, because some people just don't even know how to tap into their body. They don't have words for their emotions. They haven't done that. They're not practiced at that. And so I'm imagining the front end of what you're doing is just connecting people with their body, connecting them with their breath, connecting their feet to the earth, just having them build a new relationship with self that might be super foreign and new to them, or not. Maybe it's not, but I imagine for most people that is, and if they don't do it often, it can be extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, so building from where they're at. If someone's never been into the nervous system gym before, then it's going to be teaching them how to bring awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We are just flooded with distraction. Our tools, our devices, our phones are trained to distract us. Someone coming into the nervous system gym therapy for the first time needs to have basic training of how are you going to be present? What does that even mean? How
Yeah.
to train your mind to even be aware
Mm-hmm.
of what it is doing,
Yeah.
and then how to then come back to what you choose to want to come back to. Building compassion is a big one. Self-compassion, a compassionate self toward others, toward yourself,
Mm-hmm.
toward your partner. So even just training how to direct your mind to do something, and then how to generate an emotion, how to feel the emotion in your body,
Mm-hmm.
those are all needed to then bring up trauma,
Yeah.
and then be able to track, become present,
Yeah.
and then build the capacity to be with uncomfortable things, and then bring it all together. It's really a stacking.
Yeah. 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 I'm curious how you move people from processing the trauma to that repatterning and creating a different positive cognition or different perception, because that I'm assuming is a process. So if I was physically abused and I felt unworthy and I felt unlovable, and then I've processed that and I've gotten maybe anger out, maybe rage, maybe I've pounded the cushions on the couch, and my body has felt all of that and I'm moving through it, then where is that transition to moving towards I am safe now, I am worthy, I am lovable, and looking at that situation in a different light.
The and, I think, is the key.
Mhm.
It's the being in that place of the and. Like, how could you be worthy and lovable and this happened?
Mhm.
So the trauma doesn't like and. It's very much trying to form a narrative that is like X happens, it means Y. And the and is complex. It's like, you cannot bring complexity into this. I don't know how to handle complexity.
Mhm.
Then there would be more than one decision, and then it'll just contract.
Mhm.
So it is slowly bringing into awareness and presence of what could be the narrative around this. How could this happen if you're worthy?
Mhm.
What else could be happening? And trying to take different perspectives.
Mhm.
Maybe even try to understand the abuser, which isn't fun. Trying to understand the system
Yeah.
of abuse, the system of which abuse happens in. And then it's a lot of grieving, which grieving is another nervous system expansion that's not linked.
Yeah. I
I don't
almost
have
see it
control.
like a stepping outside of ourselves. So when we are a victim of abuse or any trauma, then it's very much about us. And then there's this point where we can step outside of ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
look at, well, that person was doing the best that they could, or they were probably abused by somebody, or this all happened to me and now I have all these skills and all these attributes that I wouldn't have had without it. And so there's almost a layer where we're so in it and it's so intense that we can step outside of ourselves to get this bird's eye view. And I think that bird's eye view is the thing that helps us reconceptualize the trauma in a new way.
Yeah, it's accepting this inter being, our
Mm-hmm.
interconnectedness. What I mean by that is, uh, it sucks to not have power and be omnipotent.
Yeah.
And our immature selves, when we're triggered, we always want to have control. And when we're young, we're not even aware that we exist. Existence just is. It's just, if I feel bad, I am bad. There's no separation from me feeling and me, or even you. You're bad, I'm bad. It's just bad. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
bad. And then later it gets internalized as like, okay, now that I exist, now that I know that I'm bad, because everything's bad, I'm bad. And so if I was good, this wouldn't happen. And it's really an accepting of this interconnected being of, we are not omnipotent. By us making it about ourselves and how we're terrible, or I'm a victim, or I'm not good enough, or wasn't lovable enough, it doesn't change anything and it's not real. It's not about
Mm-hmm.
us, actually. Things can happen to us and they're awful and it's not about us. And that's really hard to accept because that means I don't
Mm-hmm.
have control. I don't have full control. I'm interconnected,
Yeah.
and knowing and having compassion for ourselves. Like, I tried my best. They're trying their best. Their best was horrible and it hurt
Mm-hmm.
me. And accepting that is very hard. But that place of acceptance is like a freedom from those old patterns.
Yeah. 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 Do you have anything that we haven't gone over that you feel like is important for people to know around somatic therapy that maybe we haven't touched on?
I think overall, the most important thing I want people to know is that those layers that I talked about is that, and sometimes you might feel like that you're doing so much. There's another layer, and there's another layer of, now that you're aware, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in your body? Like, move
Mm-hmm.
your body, whether it's dancing or offering, being of service, speaking up, hugging, loving, nurturing yourself in an active way, nurturing somebody else. So there's another layer until you are first like bringing awareness, um, looking at your thoughts, looking at your feelings and your emotions and how they're stored in the body, bringing them up, and then being different. And so you need
Yeah.
the behavioral, all three together, stacked together, is really what creates change from the inside out and
Yeah.
lets you be and feel different in the world and have different relationships.
Yeah, and I'd also like to piggyback on that that process takes time and it's an unfolding. I'm sure you've had this experience as so many other people have where there's an issue and then we think that we've gotten resolution around it and then it comes back over. These themes kind of come back over and over in our life and I think of it as peeling an onion and each time we're working on it, we're just getting closer and closer to the core. But it's a practice and it takes patience with
Yes.
ourselves, and it takes time, and it's a unfolding.
Yes. And so it's really important that you are noticing your capacity and practicing in yourself. Like, oh, I noticed I had this interaction today. You're coming back. I had this interaction this week, and I did the thing that I've been practicing, and it would have triggered me, and it triggered me much less, and I responded differently. And I feel so good about myself because that's exactly what I've been practicing. And I
Yeah,
felt differently and didn't knock me off the whole week. I didn't
and you're building
dissociate.
these stronger and stronger neural pathways. It gets easier and easier for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, Sheena, how can people contact you? How can they reach you? What are some of your offerings that you have?
Traditionally, you can find me at sheenajjensen.com. But you can also find me if you want therapy, bayfamilycounseling.com. And I'm on socials as the marriage therapist, all one word. And I'm licensed in Colorado, California, Hawaii, and New York.
Oh my gosh.
And I also do coaching with people worldwide. I have a coaching program that's really about connection. And so connecting with ourselves through that nervous system really helps us connect with our partners. So I do couples, and I'll be releasing The Connected Relationship as an upcoming program that's really about the inside out, connecting, looking through connection ourselves and how that's impacting with our connection with our partners, whoever we want to connect with in a relationship, to have like a more intimate relationship. So you can just follow me on The Marriage Therapist, or reach out to me from one of those websites, or send me an email, therapywithsheena@gmail.com.
Perfect.
One
Yeah.
E.
And at the end of the day, I think that's what we're all seeking, is connection with ourselves and with each other. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Sheena, so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you for our conversation today.
Thanks. I love talking about this. Thank you so much for your interest and for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.